So, wow, it's a whole lot of information. And you might be wondering, what does that really mean to me as a teacher or as an employee of a district? I'm going to go over some specific questions that have been asked that you may be wondering about or may be relevant to your work. The first question that may apply to your work asks, does House File 802 prohibit an educator from indicating their own preferred pronouns or inviting students to express their preferred pronouns? The answer is no. House File 802 does not prohibit an educator from sharing their preferred pronouns or from inviting students to express their own preferences. Another question says that our U.S. history courses cover topics including slavery and redlining. Will our staff face adverse employment actions if they continue to teach this subject as part of the required curriculum? No, staff that work within the boundaries of their professional ethics and the requirements of House File 802 will not face adverse employment action. The historical topics listed above are facts and important when discussing U.S. history. It is not the intent of House File 802 that our nation and our state's history not be taught. House File 802 explicitly states that the law is not intended to prohibit the use of curriculum that teaches the topics of sexism, slavery, racial oppression, racial segregation, or racial discrimination, including topics related to the enactment and enforcement of laws resulting in sexism, racial oppression, segregation, and discrimination. School boards should regularly review their policies and regulations related to curriculum development, implementation, and inspection. Can staff allow students to engage in discussions about topics such as racial oppression, including topics like systemic and institutional racism, as part of the classroom discussion? The answer is yes. While House File 802 prohibits staff from teaching, advocating, encouraging, promoting, or acting upon stereotypes or scapegoating towards others, it does allow for this type of organic conversation on these topics among students. Another House File 744, requires districts to protect the intellectual freedom of students and staff. Generally, this requires an educational environment that encourages the sharing of a diversity of viewpoints. What's really important is that the environment created is one where students with different views feel heard. These may even be unpopular views, but the students still feel safe and heard in the classroom. Another question that comes up is, our district wants to provide mandatory training on equity to all licensed employees. How can we do this? Districts can and should continue to engage in this important work. Educators are encouraged to work proactively with the trainers providing mandatory training to ensure that content is both meaningful and respects the parameters of House File 802. Training may still consist of an exploration of our society's past and the current state of racism, sexism, and inequality. For instance, training can include individual accounts and experiences of inequity, racism, and sexism. Meaningful dialogue on the topics of racism and sexism often have the effect of making people feel uncomfortable. This discomfort is not prohibited by House File 802. Training should create an environment of respect where a diversity of views and beliefs can be safely shared to encourage that everyone is thoughtfully considering alternate views. Creating such an environment is not easy to do, but it is vital to model this behavior through training with employees so that those employees can create similar safe environments that foster diversity of views for student classrooms. Another question says, do the prohibitions of House File 802 apply to co-curricular events or presenters? Examples of this might be a project that studies redlining in our community. There are a lot of great presenters or events that can be great learning opportunities for staff or students. If the event or presenter is not part of the curriculum or a mandatory student or staff training, the prohibitions listed do not apply. Co-curricular events or presenters that are voluntary may address specific defined concepts. You might be wondering, how do individuals make complaints if they believe district employees have violated any portion of these laws? Well, parents and other people are encouraged to follow their school district's board policies on employee complaints and grievances. While each district is different, typically these policies will require the parent to start at the lowest organizational level for voicing their concerns. For concerns related to the curriculum, most districts have policies in place for parents to voice concerns about that curriculum. A lot of info, a lot of different things that we have to be aware of as educators, and reading through the FAQ document in its entirety is highly recommended. You can also find the actual bill through a quick Google search. Having knowledge of current legislation and the impacts it may have is both beneficial for your district and yourself as an individual. When reading through the FAQ, there are several other specific questions with guidance from a team of lawyers who created this document for us. Questions such as, can board members engage in equity training with staff? Or can items that display a social message be displayed in classrooms? Those questions are down in text with answers that are clear and easily understood written right below it. Having an understanding of this type of important information is critical, and we want you to feel confident and at ease when providing excellent service and supports to your students. If at any time you have questions or want to discuss this information on a deeper level, reach out to your administrator.